Alright folks, today just a quick video on the area we're going to be doing our urban forest garden, demo garden in. You know, we have 3 acres here, but a lot of people that come out here to learn are going to say, well, I only have a small backyard. I think this space is pretty representative of a lot of small yards, and I'm going to try to move the camera a lot slower than I have in the past. A lot of you have mentioned that it's hard to watch. But this building right here is about, it's 60 feet long. So it's a 60-foot length. Coming over here, that building there is got a 25-foot wide front. So it's probably smaller than most backyards with those constraints. And what we're thinking about doing, and I mentioned today's show, is actually extending the urban demo garden to the back of that building and using space on the sides that basically, so there's a tree there, a pretty large tree, almost dead center in the frame right now, coming kind of back from there, level with that being part of the space, and having that come right back to the edge of this building. And kind of that's the border. I'm doing the same thing on the other side. That would give us about 3,100 square feet of space, which is a typical mid-sized, middle-class backyard. And I want to talk about some of the things we have planned today with it. There's Max's kiddie pool for cooling down and when he gets too hot. And I'm sure the geese will be in there soon. But there's some other water features that I really want to spend time on today. First of all, we had a huge compost pile here. We've moved it out with the recent workshop, used a lot of it, and that's kind of opened the space where we can kind of look at it and visualize it better. What we've done is we've brought in 2 6-foot by 2-foot galvanized stock tanks, dug this one out, leveled it with sand, and started to pile some dirt around it. Some more dirt will be coming in, but it's pretty low. Dirt's a pretty low input item. And then we've got, there's a drain plug down there and a trench. That trench just runs right up to there. My equipment operator, who we'd have probably done this with wheelbarrows, but since the equipment was here, went ahead and dumped it, and he dumped dirt in the front of it where its drain cock is, so I'll have to remove that. But that's loosely packed, easy to move dirt, so I'll just pull that out of the way to get access to it. In this trench is going to go 3 pipes. One's going to be electrical conduit for electrical stuff, basically to run a pump. That'll probably run right there and have a little trench that cuts around back to the building, and I'll install an outdoor rated electrical outlet right on the corner of that building on the outside so that we can run power out here to this and some other things. And there's already power in that building, so it'll be really, really easy to do. That stock tank isn't buried at all. It's just mounded up. We threw some sand down, we leveled it, and we mounded around it. So it's certainly, that area right there is about 2 inches higher than ground level here, plus that tank is a good 10, 11 inches into the ground. So we're looking at a good foot of drop. So what we'll do is we'll run a pipe out of the bottom of that tank into the bottom of this tank. The tank up here will have a stand-up pipe. It'll come out of right there where the valve is, and it'll sit up inside the tank like this, just down from the top of the tank. And we'll put a cap on that tank that we can open anytime we want, or maybe we'll just make the pipe higher than the top of the tank, just put it together with loose fittings where whenever you want to drain it, you just dip it down and it'll start draining until it gets down to the level you've put the pipe down. That would be a real simple solution, no real moving parts. Which means whenever this tank exceeds its capacity, it's going to push the water down into this tank. Now, we have a 1,500 gallon poly tank sitting on cinder blocks back there. We're going to be putting roof catchment in, so we'll have another 1,500 gallons. We've got 1,500 gallons there, and almost 1,000, 460 gallons in each of these tanks. So there's close to 1,000 gallons of water here, another 1,500 gallons back there. So anytime these start to become depleted, we can just use some water from this tank with a gravity feed down to this tank to top this tank off. If both of them need water, we just keep the water running until it begins to overflow down to the second tank. That was the original plan, and then this water could be used for irrigation out on the entire forest garden. This is what we're going to design in the forest garden. Now, someone came to the workshop with a really cool, simple way to do an aquaponics siphon. So this wood pile is going to go away, and in between this tree and this tree, and we're facing east, so this is a pretty shady spot, and you'll understand why I don't really mind that enough, or mind that much. I might cut out a few of these limbs up here to let a little bit more morning sun in, but we're going to take 4 poly tanks, 4 poly barrels, and put in 8 aquaponics grow beds right in here. And they'll sit up, you know, if I can get the thing in sight, probably about that high at the top, so that the bottoms are definitely significantly higher than the top of that tank right there. I'm going to pause for the wind a second here. All right, you can probably hear me better now. So that'll be how that works. Standing right in here somewhere will be a barrel up on a platform, 55-gallon drum with a really cool way to do a siphon, which is just using a PVC-T. I'll get you guys a picture of that in a future video so you can see it. But just understand, when that barrel fills up, it'll hit a certain point, it'll trigger a siphon, it'll start dumping its water into the grow beds. All right, so get that part down. Now, right over here, again, we're gonna have these grow beds high enough that we can do this. I'm gonna take an oval stock tank, 6 foot by 1 foot, and build a stand for it right here behind it. Build an overflow. So we'll basically cut a slot into that tank to act like a sill that'll let that oval tank that's sitting just higher than this tank overflow down into here. The water will come out of the aquaponics system into this oval tank. The oval tank will basically be another grow bed, but instead of growing vegetables for us, it'll be growing reeds. It'll be a reed bed growing lots and lots of reeds we can use for mulch as a nutrient trap, because we're exceeding the capacity of the system. We have almost 1,000 gallons of water, right? But only 8 grow beds. So that means there's going to be more nutrient produced in these ponds than we really can handle with just the 8 grow beds. The reed bed will be a huge nutrient trap. It will trap nutrient far greater than the capacity of the grow beds. So those can then be used for mulch and redistribute the nutrient as mulch into the forest garden, into any other system that we want. Now here's where the magic happens. Because this tank was already designed to overflow into this tank, the second pipe, so one was to get these 2 tanks connected, the other was for electrical, to connect it back up here to the building so we could power a pump. The pump will go into the 3rd tank, which will pump up over the lip through the trench. Trench will come around back here, and that trench will fill, or that pipe with the pump will pump all the way back here and fill that water barrel back there. That's going to be the water that flushes down into the grow beds, then through the rebed back into the tank. What does that mean? It works out very elegantly. I don't think I could have planned it this way by any better if I hadn't done it by accident. Since this tank overflows to this tank, every bit of water that comes out of this tank and ends up back in this tank, as soon as this tank exceeds capacity, goes right back to there. So that becomes our sump, even though it's a fish tank, our lowest point in the system. And that means that once the system's up and running, these 2 tanks will equalize, and the only time we'll have to add water is when there's enough evaporation and not enough rainfall to keep the system fully charged. And gee, look what we have there, 1,500 gallons of water. We don't have to push that water up at all. All we have to do is bring the water from that tank down to this tank. Now, the bottom of that tank is lower than the top of this tank. But it's not lower than the bottom of that tank. So simply by running a hose off of a fitting off of there and putting the hose into the bottom of this tank, even if the tank was almost completely drained, we could still push water into this tank. We certainly could run a hose down there and put it into that tank, which ends up being the same difference because the pump recirculates everything. But the beauty of this is, even if we just wanted a fast flow into this tank, if that tank's more than half full, we got plenty of pressure with, 1,000 gallons or so of water up in there. So that'll create a complete loop system. And this was all, now the tanks I originally planned, but the grow beds and the aquaponics system is all an add-on. We didn't really plan on bringing this in the system. Now, what we're gonna do in this aquaponics system is we're gonna focus on growing things specifically in the summer that we struggle to grow in Texas. Stuff like, I wanna say coriander, but it's like cilantro, before it turns into coriander. My problem here is, once I get to this time of year, if I plant coriander or cilantro, it becomes coriander really fast. It bolts, it goes to seed, and it loses that wonderful flavor. And I think that coriander leaves taste like feet. So lettuces, spinaches, anything that has trouble with the Texas heat, roots cooled by the water. The water system keeps its temperature very stable because we have the ground insulating it, a constant move and flow, and then we end up with a system that produces us fish and nutrient, and allows us to use the nutrient that's in excess, as surplus, and return it to the ground here where the whole forest garden system is in. So that's the mainframe plan. There'll be all types of trees and bushes and shrubs planted in here. Even though this looks very shady, this wall on this thing gets nailed with sun even in the winter. There's plenty of clearance over the roof there. And then that wall there, a little bit out gets plenty of sun, but right up against it is 100% shade all the time. I've got a lot of microclimates to work in here, and I've got a lot of the things that people consider problems in a backyard that I can demonstrate solutions with. So that's the plan. If you were here for the recent workshop, you got it firsthand, but it's actually evolved since then. The whole aquaponics thing happened at the very end of that workshop, talking to one of the students who will be coming back to help instruct the construction of that aquaponics system. My plan for now is to simply get the system in place, water catchment to the tank flow to this tank flowing to that tank, and to be able to recirculate water. The aquaponics component we can completely hold off on until the students come, probably back in September. I may go ahead and build the platform for the reed bed and start cycling water through the reed bed, because that would be a really cool way to get the system moving in the right direction. And then on the workshop, we'll complete the aquaponics portion with the siphon and everything else. Anyway, it's been Jack Spirico with another video showing you what we're doing on the homestead. And wait till you see this in a year. 3,000 square feet. That'll probably produce more than we need, and we still have, you know, the majority of the rest of the property to work with.